These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
Tension erupted on The View when Karoline Leavitt dropped shocking revelations that sent the host scrambling. It was a moment no one saw coming, and now the fallout has everyone talking. So what exactly happened, and why has this expose shaken up the show? Let's break it all down. The View is no stranger to heated debates, but this time, the chaos was on another level.
Democrats and the media are now unloading all their nasty attacks on rising Trump White House star and new press secretary, Karoline Leavitt. Watch this.
Karoline Leavitt, known for her role as Trump's press secretary, stepped into the spotlight, and the reaction was immediate the moment she spoke. The conversation turned explosive.
These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wake up.
Democrats wasted no time launching their attacks, but it quickly became clear this wasn't going to be an easy battle. Now, the big question is, what does this mean for the future of The View? And is this just the beginning of even bigger controversy? Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. The View's smear campaign didn't just fail, it backfired in spectacular fashion. What started as petty jealousy has now left the hosts scrambling to salvage their reputations. And the person responsible for exposing it all, Karoline Leavitt. Her no-nonsense approach sent shockwaves through the studio, leaving the hosts flustered and exposed. But the real jaw-dropper came from Joy B. Ha, a self-proclaimed feminist who constantly preaches about empowering women. She took a shocking turn. Instead of acknowledging Karoline's accomplishments, she dismissed her success, reducing it to nothing more than her looks.
She's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
The hypocrisy couldn't be more obvious. How can someone claim to uplift women while tearing down a young, successful one in the same breath? Karoline wasn't about to let that slide. Without hesitation, she fired back, calling out the double standards and holding The View accountable. Now, the fallout is only beginning, and one thing is clear. Karoline Leavitt just changed the game, but here is the real question. If Karoline is a 10, where does that leave Joy B. Ha? Well, leave it to Greg Gutfeld from Fox News to deliver the punchline. In classic Gutfeld fashion, he threw some serious shade at Joy, and let's just say, it wasn't flattering. His commentary had everyone talking, and the internet hasn't stopped laughing since.
Joy Behar calls her a 10. I mean, how dare she objectify a woman with a sexist rating system, but it's such a typical thing from a 1.5.
But Karoline didn't just put Joy B. Ha in her place. She had a message for the entire Democratic propaganda machine. She made it crystal clear they have two choices: ride the Trump wave or be forgotten, because once Trump is done with them, they won't have scandals or media-driven distractions to keep them relevant. And judging by the stunned silence on The View, they knew it. Their grip on the narrative is slipping, and Karoline just made sure everyone saw it happen. At this point, it's obvious to anyone paying attention. The ladies of The View are just bitter. They can't stand that someone younger, sharper, and actually deserving of the spotlight is stealing their thunder. After Joy Behar's crude remarks, Whoopi Goldberg jumped in.
Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Desperate to shift the narrative, she went full mother hen mode, scolding Karoline Leavitt for what she called a lack of tolerance for weakness. But let's be real, this wasn't wisdom, it was damage control. Karoline wasn't buying it. In a now viral moment, Whoopi tried to blur the lines between civil rights and wokeness, acting as if they're the same thing. But Karoline didn't let that slide. With brutal precision, she dismantled Whoopi's argument, making it painfully clear either Whoopi doesn't understand the difference, or she's deliberately misleading her audience. And judging by Whoopi's stunned reaction, she felt that burn. If Whoopi Goldberg is such a fierce advocate for women's rights, then why didn't she call out Joy B. Ha for reducing Karoline Leavitt's success to just her looks? Maybe because her so-called moral compass only points in one direction. Instead of holding her co-host accountable, Whoopi saw an opportunity, not to defend Karoline, but to attack her. And what was Karoline's crime? Daring to use her first White House press conference to call out the legacy media for losing the trust of everyday Americans. That was enough to put a target on her back right on cue. Whoopi played the race card, steering the conversation toward identity politics.
Women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason.
Instead of addressing the real issue, it was a textbook deflection, nothing new, just the same tired strategy. But she didn't stop there in full condescension mode. Whoopi claimed Karoline doesn't even understand what wokeness means. According to her, the only reason Karoline criticized it was because she thinks it's a terrible thing to be. Karoline didn't need to respond. Whoopi's desperation said it all. It's not a terrible thing to be. That's why we fought. That's what we're fighting for, so that you could stand at that podium, so that Karine Jean-Pierre could stand at that podium, so that women of all colors and ilk, wherever they came from, whatever their belief system was, they had the opportunity to bust down that door. Let's be real. Karoline Leavitt knows exactly what wokeness is. That's why she called it out. Whoopi Goldberg's attempt to gaslight the audience into thinking Karoline was just tossing around buzzwords? It completely backfired.
How ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists, but they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years.
But if the hypocrisy wasn't already off the charts, Karoline took things a step further, exposing The View for their latest outrageous claim, trying to pin an assassination attempt on Elon Musk. Yes, you heard that right. In a fiery takedown, Karoline pointed out the sheer irony. These hosts love preaching about accountability, yet here they were, recklessly spreading baseless accusations. She reminded them that not too long ago, the media had a very different tune. But times have changed now. They're so desperate to control the narrative that they'll twist anything to fit their agenda. And Karoline, she wasn't about to let them get away with it for years. The View, along with the rest of the legacy media, has operated without restraint. They've controlled the conversation, silenced opposition, and shaped public opinion without ever being held accountable. But thanks to Karoline Leavitt's bold stance, those days might be coming to an end. Her push for accountability is forcing these outlets to answer for their reporting.
They likened President Trump to Hitler. They have mocked him. They have shamed him. They have lied about him consistently on their show. And it was a joy to watch them on November the 6th when they realized that tens of millions of Americans do not listen to the lies that they have spewed.
And let's be honest, that's their worst nightmare. Without the freedom to spin the truth however they want, their entire playbook starts falling apart. Karoline just flipped the script on legacy media, and The View is absolutely losing it. She just announced a major shakeup in the White House press poll, introducing a new media section designed to hold traditional outlets accountable for years of biased reporting and outright misinformation about President Trump. This isn't just a shift, it's a direct challenge to everything they've relied on. And if their reaction is anything to go by, they know exactly what's coming. For decades, the Associated Press and the White House Correspondents Association have controlled the press room, deciding who gets to ask questions and which narratives get pushed.
She's young, but she's wise beyond her years, and she has access to the president, which is something someone didn't have.
But those days are over. Karoline Leavitt made one thing clear: legacy media won't get to run the show unchecked anymore. In a major shakeup, 2 front row seats, once reserved for White House staff, will now go to new media voices who actually challenge the establishment. And if that wasn't enough to send The View into a meltdown, she also reinstated press passes for 440 journalists. Who had them revoked under Biden's administration?
The president doesn't surround himself by anybody smart. And Joy Behar and those guys, of course this was going to happen. This is why conservative women just have to move on, do their thing, and not worry about the criticism from folks like at The View.
While many praised this bold move toward transparency, The View panel had an entirely different reaction because let's be real, the last thing they want is a press corps that actually holds their narrative to the fire. Starting today, this seat in the front of the room, which is usually occupied by the press secretary's staff, will be called the new media seat. Karoline announced, "My team will review applications and give credentials to new media applicants who meet our criteria and pass United States Secret Service requirements to enter the White House complex." And right on cue, The View panel completely lost it. Sunny Hostin scoffed at the idea of new media reporters being qualified to attend briefings, acting as if only the legacy media elites deserved a seat at the table. The arrogance was impossible to ignore. Then came Whoopi Goldberg, stepping in with her usual holier-than-thou attitude. She warned that under the new administration, people would just spout stuff. That's right, no real argument, no real defense, just vague, dismissive hand-waving because deep down, they know exactly what this shift means. The days of scripted narratives and controlled messaging are slipping away, and they're panicking. I don't always like the way they do it, but we have to have ourselves together. We can't just say stuff. In spite of what they tell you, we can't just spout stuff. So I want that for everybody. The irony is almost too much to handle. For years, mainstream media, including The View, has twisted narratives, pushed half-truths, and said whatever fit their agenda. But now that Karoline Leavitt is holding them accountable, suddenly Whoopi Goldberg wants to talk about standards. Give me a break. This isn't about journalism or ethics, it's about control. These hosts thrive on being in the spotlight, telling the public what to think. But now, millions of Americans are walking away from traditional media and turning to alternative sources, and that is what's really sending them into a panic. For the first time in years, they are losing their grip on the narrative, and they hate it. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in U.S. history, isn't letting them off the hook. She called out the media for losing the trust of the American people and pointed to a shift that the mainstream outlets refuse to acknowledge. Viewers are turning elsewhere for the truth, and the old guard, they know they're running out of time. We know for a fact that there have been lies pushed by many legacy media outlets in this country about this president, about his family, and we will not accept that, she stated. We will call you out when we feel your reporting is wrong, or when there is misinformation about this White House. The View is finally feeling the heat. For years, they've had the freedom to say whatever they wanted, spreading misinformation, smearing political opponents, and gaslighting their audience without consequence. But those days, they're over, because now someone is keeping them in check. And that someone is Karoline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in U.S. history. She isn't just making headlines. She's putting the entire legacy media on notice. Let's not forget who she replaced. Karine Jean-Pierre never missed a chance to remind everyone that she was the first Black, openly LGBTQ immigrant to hold the role, as if identity alone was the qualification that mattered. But competence speaks louder than labels. Karoline Leavitt is proving that real leadership isn't about checking diversity boxes. It's about holding power accountable and speaking for the American people. And judging by the media's reaction, they know they've met their match. Even Jen Psaki, Karine Jean-Pierre's predecessor, wasn't a fan of the endless echo chamber strategy, calling it diminishing. But that hasn't stopped The View from playing the identity card over and over, hoping no one notices how weak their arguments really are. Karoline Leavitt, however, isn't here for the games. She's here to do the job and do it well. But The View wasn't done embarrassing themselves. After their cheap shots failed, they tried a classic gotcha question about illegal immigration. They thought they had her cornered. They thought she'd fumble. Spoiler alert, she didn't.
Of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office. Can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's law.
They pushed her to admit that Trump's policies were somehow unfair to illegal immigrants. But Karoline, she flipped the script. She reminded them that Trump's America prioritizes law-abiding citizens over those who break the law.
As far as this administration goes, I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
And just like that, their entire argument crumbled. But instead of admitting defeat, The View did what they do best. Doubled down, grasping at straws, they scrambled to spin the narrative. They love to pretend they care about justice, but let's be real, this wasn't about defending immigrants. This was about pushing a tired agenda and trying to trip up a woman who was way too sharp to fall for it. And Karoline, she's loving every second of it. She's not just standing her ground. She's watching these so-called media elites struggle to keep up, and she's making it look effortless. Because here is the truth, Karoline isn't just exposing The View. She's exposing the entire legacy media machine.
Vast majority of Americans want people in Washington to be good stewards of their tax dollars, don't agree with these radical priorities of the left. And so that's why the president is going to continue to do this. The Democrats can either get on board or they can prepare to lose another election.
She knows exactly how the game is played, and now she's making sure everyone else sees it too. For years, mainstream media controlled the narrative, twisting facts to fit their agenda. But that era, it's coming to an end, and Karoline is shutting it all down in real time. And the best part, the harder The View fights back, the more they prove Karoline's point. In a final blow, she dropped the ultimate truth bomb. The View has spent so much time catering to the left that they've completely lost themselves. For years, they've been nothing more than a mouthpiece, blindly echoing whatever narrative they were handed. But now, with Karoline holding the media accountable, they're scrambling. They've spent so long pushing the same tired agenda that the moment someone actually challenges them, they crumble. And Karoline, she's watching it all unfold and loving every second of it, because at the end of the day, The View has been completely exposed. Their hypocrisy, their bias, their desperation to hold on to any relevance. And now, there's no hiding it. Karoline Leavitt didn't just call them out. She forced The View to face their own downfall in real time. But make no mistake, this is just the beginning. With the media landscape shifting, legacy outlets like The View are desperately trying to keep control and failing miserably. So the real question is, how much longer can they keep up this charade? Are we watching the end of mainstream media dominance? Or will they find a way to claw their way back into power? One thing's for sure, this fight is far from over. Be sure to subscribe to stay tuned on the latest news.